Hey, hi, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to week 2 of the Beginner's Guide to Performance Analysis with Chris Barry from the English Institute of Sport and me, Nick Shepherd from British Judo. So without any further delay, sorry for the couple of minutes late joining there. We had a few technical issues. I'll pass you over to Chris now. Okay.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Glad to have you all. As Nick says, yeah, apologies for the delay. We've been trying to figure out a few technical issues with this, but hopefully we'll get there. I was looking at trying to do some breakout rooms, but I'm not currently seeing the option for me to do it, which is a little bit unhelpful. So please don't go all Handforth Parish Council and attack me, or I'll be forced to go full Jackie Weaver mode. If you don't get that reference, just Google. So I was, hoping to put some breakout rooms in here, which is going to be a little bit tricky because I can't find the option to do it. So what I think we're going to have to do is to just sort of, just go for it and just like, let's see what you've done. And I might just pick on you to talk about what you've looked at over the week, and we can work from there. So I hope that sounds all right. So in the meantime, I will give everybody a bit of a recap of what we went through last week. So I'll just share what I showed you last week. Okay, so in terms of the technical analysis stuff, what we looked at was that we can make it into like a bit of a story of a beginning, middle, and end. So if you're looking at a throw, it's preparation, entry, and execution. If we're looking at comparisons to the world's best, what does the world's best look like? What's that ultimate measure of success? Comparison of video against world's best examples. Comparison to self, so doing our plan, do, review, and then following these sort of steps. What basics do we need to be able to capture some video and do some analysis? And what sort of challenges might we face that we've got to consider and overcome? Likewise, looking at that, we kind of think about a bit further into it. Look, what kind of data side of things can we look at? What statistical analysis can we do, and to what extent? Understanding the limitations of that again, and the fact that it only helps you ask the questions as opposed to necessarily answering them. What sort of tools are available to us to use? Some of us will have access to more than others, but make the best use of what we can. And then this was the sort of homework that I put in for everybody for this week. So hopefully that gives us a bit of something to work with. As I said, I did want to do breakout rooms, but it's not seemingly looking like it's going to allow me to do that. So what I'm going to do is just look at people in the list, probably in alphabetical order. So if your name's at the start, sorry, but you're going to be called on first. So I'm lucky to Amber Barry, who I'll call on first. So how's it looked this week with what you've been trying to work on? What would be the things that you're wanting to do in the future? Let's go, Amber.
I wasn't here last week. I wasn't able to get on.
Great start.
The video, so it probably isn't best starting with me, to be honest. But
right, for the record, that excuse won't fly from now on. Okay. Amber, I'll let you off.
Start. No worries.
I'll let you off, Amber. But instead, we will go to Andrew Ward. Earth to Andrew.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Sorry, let me move somewhere. Well, not disturbing the family. I was thinking I was going to get away with listening.
No such luck.
Right, so.
Yes. Tell me a little bit, first of all, about what's happening with your analysis kind of thing that you're looking at, and what do you think are the challenges, and what do you think we'll do in the future?
So to be fair, I was interested to see what this topic would be about. My players are relatively inexperienced,
Mhm.
and they compete at fairly low level competitions, and a few of them go to downgradings. And so I was struggling, thinking, well, how do I convert, particularly talking about data analysis, sort of to numericize the kind of things that they're doing? I guess the things I look for is what sort of grips they take. So do they always go for the same grip? Do they go for the favourite grip? What are they moving forwards or moving backwards as they do that? And I'll potentially look at patterns and try and translate that into what are they good at, and advise them based on that. So it's largely empirical rather than a strict engineering data type analysis.
Yeah. And that to me sounds really like applied and easy to manage for you for what you need. So yeah, I'd say that's a good start. So moving forward, having sort of thought about what we did last week, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm kind of looking for, to be honest, that's about as far as I got. I mean, as I say, I was struggling with the concept of how to put numbers to stuff to analyze it. And I got to the point where, okay, I'm doing sort of watch, look, and plan, do, review, plan, do, review, the sort of Deming cycle. Those kind of things I think I can quite easily relate to and apply. To take it further forward, maybe I need to get lucky enough to get somebody who's a bit more advanced, and that's just something that comes as the club grows, and then unfortunately you lose people, and it sort of you kind of apply it at a level which is appropriate to the player.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Right, who we've got next on our list? Thank you for that, Andrew. Amber, yeah, you've escaped it. Anthony Brown, we've got next.
Hiya, Chris.
Hiya.
Remembered to take myself off of mute because it's a daily event of work these days. You're on mute.
Good man.
Yeah. So similar to Andrew, really. Most of my players tend to be at the lower to middle sort of ranking type competitions. Have had 2 or 3 who've gone on to do an awful lot better. A couple were contemporaries of yours when you were on the squads as well. So I was thinking about what I'd probably be using it for at the minute, and it probably would be initially just about basic movement and grip patterns, because even though I'm 6'2", I tend to end up with lots of shorter players who tend to be dominated by players coming over the top. So it's looking at that and seeing that, and then letting them see what's happened, and then working on the strategy so we can actually stop that arm coming over. How we can work on that, because as much as you tell them, sometimes they don't believe it until they've actually seen it themselves. So it's that chance to sit down with people, and I think again, and just looking again at the way that players are trying to set up their own techniques as well. They're going to make an attack, or they're building it in as combination. And I think as much as that, when we do that, I think that's as much useful for us as coaches, because I think often we just teach a throw in isolation and actually don't think about how we're going to set it up. So I think that's going to be a useful two-way thing. I'm thinking about how I was taught. I was always taught, here, zip on Cianagi, but nobody ever taught me how you could set it up with Kouchi and things like this, stuff you expected to find out yourself as you were going along, it seemed like. So
Yeah.
you can do a lot more. So looking at your own players, looking at what other players are doing as well, I think. This player is always successful, so what are they doing and how can we take that? So lots of different strands that we can look at with it, I think.
Perfect. Good stuff. Right, who's the next unlucky person? We've got sorry, I've got a chat open as well. Next we have, I think, Barry's just messaged me saying he hasn't had a chance to see last week either, so he's got away with it. Bernadine Reynolds, we've got now.
Hiya.
How are you doing?
I mainly teach 5 and 6 year olds, so I'm sort of struggling a bit, to be honest.
Okay, so last week I was asked a little bit of a question about the teaching the sort of early ages, and it's probably more on a technical focus to your performance analysis might literally be eyeballing what they do. It might just be, I want you to do this many or as many of this type of attack in this fight as possible if you're doing a randori practice with them at that time, or it might be that you do your beginning, middle, end of technique, and then you look at where it fits for them and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very early stage stuff, but yeah, your stuff sounds a little bit more like that.
Yeah.
Does that sound like the kind of thing that would work for you guys?
Yeah, well, we have them doing techniques and going up and down the mat, moving in and out and stuff, and the grips. So we do try, you know. Don't really know what else to do.
Yeah, well, that's a good start. It's something that is a very basic level of analysis that will work in the context you need it. So yeah, a bit of eyeballing, beginner, middle, and end stuff sounds good to me for you guys. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Who we got next? We've got Beth and Tommy Foster. Have we got a double team here?
Hiya. We
How we doing?
coach mainly level 1, level 2 players. Once they get sort of more advanced than that, we pass them on to other local clubs, and they normally go up to the ETDC for this area. So same as what everyone else has said really before us, we've got judo tots from the 3-year-olds, which is just games. And then when obviously we get into 5-year-olds, it's just repeating. It's more monkey see, monkey do with them, rather than videoing them and analysing them. And so it's at a very low level. But we do have some competitors that are sort of 9, 10 upwards. But again, they're only doing level 1, level 2 competitions. Not many are going any higher than that. We've had a few at the British schools, but again, it'd be year 6 and 7.
So in that context, it's very early level competition. For
Yeah.
you, maybe looking more at the experience of the competition more than the outright performance at this stage.
Yeah. Well, we always tell them when they go to the British schools, especially in year 6, your first year is just to take it in. It'll be the first time they've ever seen a multi-mat event on such a big scale. And a few of them have been overawed, and we've said it's not about the actual judo on the mat. Go and enjoy it, soak up the atmosphere. It's a night where they stay over, which they've probably never done before for judo. At our competitions, the maximum amount of mats that they've done before is 2, and we do a lot of 1 mat events.
The Olympic Games is on 2 mats. Don't diss that.
Oh no, we all have to start somewhere.
Good stuff, right? Thanks for that. Who we got now? We've got Bill Baker, I think.
Hi there. I missed last week as well, but I'm going to have a go at answering the question. I've been busy.
I admire this. This is good.
So I guess when I've used this sort of thing in the past, it's more been around looking at opponents. So thinking about the style that they fight. Are they kind of people that like to counter versus do an initial attack themselves? Are they left or right-handed? What are the favoured techniques? Do you see any kind of patterns where perhaps maybe the tempo starts to fall down later on in the fight? Perhaps you might have a better opportunity as they tire. I guess what I'd probably like to find out a bit more about is some of the numerical analysis. I guess you could probably look at the timings of things. So is the attack rate at the right level? Does it drop away? Can you see techniques are maybe more successful towards the end of the fight relative to the start? And then also possibly breaking down which techniques failed or succeeded. Perhaps there's things that you can pick up from what didn't work. Maybe using the 3 steps that you outlined with the preparation, entry, and execution. At what stage did it fail? Could they have done something differently to turn a Wazari into a Nippon or something like that?
Very good. I think the key thing is to look at if what worked, what didn't, and then crucially why. So look at the factors around that and the context that it's in to help you understand. Brilliant. That's a great answer for somebody who hasn't seen it last week. Good effort, Bill. Thanks for that. We've got Billy next. I'm not going to try and pronounce the second name on that, unfortunately.
No worries. I normally help out coaching younger players. So I got the guys that I train with to send videos of me competing and prepare a plan, do review, and kind of see what my weaknesses were, how I feel like I could develop on them, and what would be my plan going forward to see where I could improve, see where improvements were made.
Yeah, good stuff. So you're showing a different example so that they can sort of look outside of their own world and learn how to analyze judo sort of externally. Yeah, very good. That's a really good option. Really good option. Who have we got now? Brett.
Hiya.
How are you doing?
You okay?
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
not too bad, not too bad. What I generally try and use is like when my guys are in a competition, is obviously like trying to let them know what's coming towards them, what's going to happen. Like as the other guys said beforehand, is to watch the other fighters, see what way they do their entries, what way there's their favourite throws, and then try and counter that. But we also like to use video camera on the other side, plus another coach. So like I'm looking from one side of the mat, like the coaching side, but they're looking from a different angle from the other side, so they can see things that I can't see. So win, lose or draw, we still like to, after the competitions, like to analyse what we've done, and that's basically what we do.
That's a really good point to make of having multiple perspectives on it. So yeah, really good. Thank you, Brett.
Yeah.
I think Brian is another one that hasn't seen last week. But then we've got Brian Andrews. I think you just messaged me as well, Brian.
I did. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
I was thinking about one of our competitors who, as a child, medalled at national level, had about 10, 12 years off, and came back to judo over the last couple of years. I took some videos of him competing and then popped them into Coach's eye so we could slow down and look at kind of what he's doing from a technical perspective. And what I found from looking at that is when he gets tired, he starts to panic breathe. So he starts panting, which makes him more tired, and his technique goes out to the window.
Yeah.
His favorite competition technique is a drop Seoinage. And when he's calm, relaxed, that was, coming off quite well. But when he started to kind of suffer from the panic, his body alignment went out, so his feet and his knees were facing in the wrong direction. So the drop Seoinage wasn't working.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation to make. That actually, when you look at the behavioural traits of somebody when they get tired, and then it's having the conversation with them then at that point to understand, right, what can we do to manage that, because it's obviously not helping your judo. And if the favourite technique's drop Seoinage, you're going to get tired a lot, because dropping and getting up is tiring. It just is.
He's a 100 kilo plus guy as well.
Yeah, even more so then. Fair play, fair play. No, that's a really good observation to make, and a good use of an analysis tool as well with Coach's eye, and just using video to figure stuff out. Nice one. Thank you, Brian. Carly Dixon.
Hiya. So I coach little babies, which obviously they're judo tots. So I obviously don't do a lot of this sort of stuff with them. In the judo club that I am at, where I work, I often watch Randori and kind of always look at judo and I watch it. In my mind, I always think technically how we can do different things with different grips. And just with the girls on the mat, I always try and give them a bit of feedback from what I can see from my perspective. When I was doing judo, we often traveled the world without coaches. So the players ourselves actually have quite a good interest in each other and the people that they were competing against. So that sort of thing. So I think I've always looked at judo a little bit differently because of that. And I've always been interested in, like, obviously where the players, you know, when they start getting penalties, when they get scored against, you know, what time in the match they lose. Obviously looking at the opposition, do they tend to win the first 2 minutes? Do you have to kind of grind it through until you can get past that time? Do they go into the ground? A lot of judo players sometimes just don't even bother with it, and it's just reinforcing that easily on the ground as well as standing up. So for me, it's just kind of a personal interest, and quite enjoy looking at that aspect of judo.
And enjoying it is definitely, it's going to help. But yeah, I think from that perspective, you're going to be able to understand trends in world judo that you can prepare your judo tops for, essentially. So what kind of physical skills and physical literacy are they going to require to be able to execute decent judo techniques and stuff, I suppose. So cool. Yeah, it's good taking that interest in international judo. I think we're on to Christopher Mullen.
Hi, Chris. So I generally sort of coach other competitors. I'm a competitor myself, and with all Navy judoka. So meet up sporadically, train sporadically, and then compete sporadically. So I think the performance analysis would be useful for us to capture footage of each other, and then potentially go away and analyze it to learn a bit more about each other. So then when we're in that situation again in the future, we can offer a bit more valuable insight, learn, potentially pick up each other's traits, and use our combined knowledge to exploit that.
That's a really useful way of doing things. That sort of peer assessment can be like massively impactful, and something that we've utilized in the program as well, with having some of our fighters analyze each other a little bit. And sometimes you don't know what you don't know when you're sort of stuck in it with the blinkers on, and just having that external perspective, especially from somebody who you understand recognizes it as well as you do, that can be really beneficial. So that's a really good method, particularly for competitive fighters, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite left-handed, and sometimes struggle against other lefties. Whereas I know that right-handed, and I can fight a little bit right-handed. So, using the knowledge of other right-handed fighters fighting lefties would be really useful.
Yeah, really handy. Nice one. Thanks for that, Chris. Who have we got now? Christopher Tynan. I believe that's how it's pronounced. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, you got it right. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Fantastic. New to different device, so I'm not quite sure where everything is in this one. I'm coaching at a local club where quite often the adults, their first taste of competition is right before they start going for their downgrading, and we always try to send somebody along for moral support, either to the gradings or the competitions, and we also try and get somebody to get some video from the side of the mat, so that we can go through it with them afterwards, because I know from personal experience at that level, the last thing you want coming off the mat when somebody else has got a massive hip on is somebody to start dissecting how you ended up in that position. So we find it quite useful from that. So that's the kind of thing I've been thinking about. And I think it's very similar to what somebody else said earlier. We tend to have smaller fighters coming up against taller fighters, and maybe they might be slightly heavier as well, the way that the grading pools work, and they tend to run into a bit of difficulty, and often it's because of they're getting dominated over the top with the arm, but we try and coach them to get out of that. And what they often then get into trouble doing is they find themselves defeating those tactics from their opponent, but they're then in a standoff and they can't close the distance. Or when they do, we tell them to up their attack rate, try and go for combinations to unsettle their opponents, and that they up the rate, but they're not very effective, and they end up throwing themselves eventually. And that's the particular example that I was kind of thinking of, and how we might do. At the moment, we sort of like take the video and we run through them, and it's kind of empirical, kind of like subjective kind of coaching based on the video. But maybe we could also try and quantify some things like the number of attacks compared to the number of attacks that actually unbalance their opponent or unsettle them and sort of have threatened to break the deadlock. The number of attacks where you're in danger of unbalancing yourself, things like that. And or maybe you could quantify the amount of time you spend wasting energy fighting at range in that situation as something that you can like mark, and then try and figure out ways of getting better. Maybe coach them to start trying to throw off the first grip, or basically dominate the gripping better, and then use those the next time to say, right, this might not still be working, but this is improving. And so I was just thinking about those kind of things.
So it sounds to me, from what you're looking at, the main issue has been the tall fighters being able to dominate the grip. You've managed to figure out strategies to get back to 50-50.
Yeah.
And then the next step is, right, how do we turn that to our advantage?
How do we push this in our favor now? Yeah.
Yeah, and it has obviously to fit into the technical framework of what each fighter's got at their disposal, I suppose.
Yeah.
Cool. Nicely done. Cheers, Chris. Dafut. We got Dafut, or Dafut gone? I think Dafut is just unmuted, yeah. Can't hear you though.
Try that.
That's better.
Is that any better?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So I'm involved with University Judo. So we've got anything, all seniors, as in 18 plus, but anything from beginners up to first, second dan. Some of them doing first events, some of them are quite competitive players who've done quite a bit before going to uni. So I'll leave the lower grades to one side for a moment, but sticking with the higher Q grades and low Dan grades, mostly recreational level. We find we often get into a situation where players are getting penalised for negativity, for passivity, not attacking enough.
Passivity.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that is going to be about looking at videos with them in terms of, okay, let's have a look at why you're getting that, in terms of, did that attack have any real impact on the player? Why is the referee decided that if you're putting in effort, that your attacks aren't counting? Try and build up a feel for, is it about commitment? Is it about balance? Is it just about the other player blocking out with the gripping? And trying to work out whether it's genuinely an issue with trying to up the rate of attacks, improve the quality of the attacks, or work around the defense of the opponent who's stopping those attacks being considered effective by the referee.
So in my experience, those situations are almost always down to the preparation of the attack. So what kind of movement you've done, what kind of setup you've put in. It's almost always down to that. So I wonder, for you guys looking forward, if you've got any video to watch, then watching the preparation of those attacks and what could be done differently. So do they need a bigger pull? Do they need to set it up with another attack or a different direction of movement? That kind of thing.
Sure.
obviously I'm completely stabbing in the dark at that, so don't take that as a given answer.
No,
but
no.
it might be the question to ask based on what you see.
Yeah, and that sounds plausible, certainly for some of our players. I think that's a reasonable stab at what's going on. Other players just struggle to have the guts just to go for it.
Yeah, I can imagine there's a bit of a variety, but yeah, I think you've got the right idea to look at some video examples and see. It'd be good to look at that with them if you've got the time to do it.
Yeah,
and have them fully understand it. Cool, thanks for that. Danny Roberts.
Hi, Chris.
How you doing, Danny?
All right, thanks. So I was looking at learning from an expert performer. So I was looking at something I've been doing the last couple of years, like focusing on my own judo. Something I've been working on the last couple of years is going for a left-handed grip and using that for my attacks. And so I was looking at Michael Correll from the Netherlands, watching back some of my recent competition videos and comparing them to what he does and looking at the way that he sets up. Because like he's a right-handed player, but goes off that left sleeve, setting up the Seoinage and the Kouchi down from there. So I was doing that way, looking at an expert performer and seeing what I could learn from him.
Yeah, that's always a good strategy if you're trying to learn something, because you see why it's effective for them.
Yeah.
I think with the Dutch, there's often left and right doesn't necessarily mean a lot to them. Like they just sort of seem to be able to throw either way, and they tend to do like that double Dutch, double lapel grip that helps them work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good example of something. If you've got a problem and you're trying to solve it, a world-class example is a decent way to.
It's something I've only really started doing the last couple of years, because I've always been right-handed, like Uchimata, Haregoshi, throwing on one leg. And I've like Seoinage's never been a throw that I could do, but the last couple of years when I've been working off that grip instead of my classic right-handed grip, it's like an option. I've thrown a couple of people with Seoinage, so it seems to. When I was working on it, I just thought let's have a look at who's really good at that. So
yeah, good example. Good example. And I think what you've touched on there as well is you've got your options right-handed, and then you've discovered a new option that probably opens up your normal options even more.
Yeah,
that's something that I think is often missed. I think in judo is that people think I just need to be really good at my one thing, but ultimately it's this range of things that add up to the one. So if you look at Ono, for example, Ono's amazing at Osotogari. Everyone might think he's actually Uchimata, but Osotogari is what everything works off, and that threat opens up the Uchimata hit. That threat opens up his Tominagi. It opens up everything.
Yeah, so, I found that now I've got the option of going under the arm for the Seoinage. I can throw over the back of the neck and get my Haregoshi a bit better as well, because there's kind of that, like you say, that double threat.
Yeah, that's it. Opening up your options always helps. Good work. Cheers, Danny. Darren Gagan.
I didn't see it last week, but I've got an idea what people are talking about.
Yeah.
I've got a right mixture from masters through to a relatively highly ranked senior fighter, I think that's 3 or 4, and then right down to young kids in the first competitions and things like that. So for the youngsters, we do let them, well, the parents tend to film it and we review what they've done, but for me it's always been for them just getting the hands on in the right place and posture and just open attacking for the first one so they can enjoy themselves. And it's a traditional gripping with them that we go through early doors until they start to develop themselves, looking at left and right with them from the beginning, and just trying to get them. It's I find with the youngsters, posture's massive, and mirroring. I don't like, if somebody starts going quick, they'll try and go quick. If they start hunching or coming around, sometimes they'll start copying because they're not experienced. And it's just letting them be who they are and go for their favourite attacks. I try and teach them all to go left and right, but they tend to go one way generally. But if we can give them the option, because at some point they will get out gripped at any level, and it just gives you that option to do something if you can't get away from it. For my senior who competes high, we do know what all his GBL rivals do, all their favourite grips, all their main attacks, what they try to do to him to kill what he does. And it's mainly really keeping the space that suits him. There's certain areas where he's stronger, and there's certain areas where he's obviously weaker. So it's maintaining that space and reacting quickly if he's in a situation that's not good. And I don't tend to coach the kids too much when they're fighting. I like to do it afterwards. If there's something really obviously, like the bent in half, or the sitting back on the heels, or the lapel hands really low down, I'll perhaps say something. But the rest of it, just let them have a go, have a fight, and we'll have a chat about it afterwards.
Cool. Good stuff. Sounds like you have a good relationship with the fighters to actually have that discussion afterwards as well.
Yeah, it's the coming away. You don't go into a massive amount of detail after every time they fought, but it's as long as they've enjoyed it, it's done no matter what. Because none of them go on the mat and don't try. They all give it 100%. So as long as they realise you're never disappointed, it takes so much bottle just to turn up and have a go.
Absolutely.
And just progress from there.
Absolutely, yeah. Your first fight is the way in, really, isn't it? Just get in there. Nice one. Thanks, Darren. Darren Collett.
Hi, Chris. I found personally that having taken my refereeing a little bit more seriously, it's made me a better coach, because I tend to watch now both players. As a referee, you need to do that. As a coach, you tend to watch your player and concentrate on your player. I think that's a basic mistake that a lot of younger or less mature coaches make. But I found that watching both players, you get a better understanding. When it comes to coaching, same as everybody else. There's a lot of different players, a lot of different skill levels, from your very beginners and your tiny tots all the way through to some people competing at the nationals. So just trying to keep it simple. So like everybody else has said, just looking at their tempo throughout the fight. When do they win? When do they lose? What's the best technique that they use to score? What's the technique that they get scored against? Leading grip seems to be one of the big ones. One of the better players that I was coaching at the time, at the start of the fight, always used to lean in. His right-handed player, he'd lean in with his left hand to take his grip. And the minute he leant forward, he was flying 9 times out of 10. It took a minute or two to teach him back on the posture. Keep your posture, keep your balance, don't overreach yourself. So just simple things like that. And the main preparations for the throws, whether it be Tori or Uki, whichever one's doing the attacking, how they're defending, which way they're moving. Are they right-handed moving left, left-handed moving right? Like Danny said, is it a right-handed grip coming in left-handed, which used to be my favourite? And where are the penalties coming from? Are they conceding penalties? Are my players conceding penalties? Or are they forcing the opposition to concede penalties? How we can turn that sort of passivity or negativity into a positive and into an attacking front. The plan do check out like that. Do that a lot for work and everything else. So it tends to come into my judo and my coaching. A lot of that is through video analysis after the fights, the parents, or if we can get a video set up, then superb. And the other thing back at the club is a dual coaching aspect. So as I believe somebody else said, they like to do that when they're actually at the events. Tended to use that a lot actually at the club. So you're standing on one side of the mat, you've got somebody else standing at 90 degrees. If you've got 3 or 4 coaches all the way around the mat, and then you can just compare notes as you're going around on some of the better players, some of the higher grade players as they're doing their randori. What was working, where were they stepping, how did they get caught there, how did they get in? And that tends to work quite well, I find.
Good stuff. Cheers, Darren.
Thank you.
Eddie.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Okay. What I was looking at was a senior player in a right-to-right situation, a player who gives away a lot of shidos because they can't cope with strong right-handed sort of high collar grip. So what I thought I would do was got several videos, would kind of look at the videos, work out when this was happening. Was it happening from the start of the contest? Was it happening all the way through? Was it happening towards the end when they got tired? Trying to work out, was it happening from a certain situation? Was it happening if they lost control of the sleeve, was it happening after a mate and a regrip up? Was there any sort of regular situations where this was happening? And then we'd have a look at what they were doing and what we could make them do, what were improving their ability to avoid that high collar grip, help them improve breaking the high collar grip, or trying to develop. They don't have a good left-handed technique, so they can't turn in there. So either, it's not natural for them. So can they develop a better left-handed technique, or can they do something else to break that situation down so they're not being controlled? Because they give away a lot of shidos because they get that high collar grip and the head goes down, and it's not very long before they get in the shido. So we thought,
just like that, it's a matter of time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not very long at all, is it? So we thought we'd look at all of that and then try and work out when it's happening, why it's happening, what situations it happens in, and what they're doing now in response to that, and then seeing what we can do for going forward. And then the review would be, once we all get back to some judo, then to see, are they learning from that? Have they learned from that? Once we can do all that. So that was the sort of situations I was going to look at.
Good stuff. That sounds like you have a good handle on what you're looking for, and I bet you'll find something.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah, I bet you'll find something if you're looking at that. Perfect. Good stuff. Thanks, Eddie. Fiona.
Hiya, how are you?
I'm very well, Fiona. Thank you.
Likewise with most of the other people. I've only just become affiliated with the BJA for my little fledgling club.
Yep.
So none of my players have actually seen a competition or even know what it is. So selfishly, I think I was mainly on this call for myself in terms of my own performance. I think what I've started to do prior to lockdowns happening was actually spending more time looking more critically at the randori that I could see going on around me, and it was just trying to pick up some more formal tips from this about the sort of things I was looking at, in terms of are they coming out left or right, how do they build their gripping strategies and things like that, and how does that develop from there. And I'm just fortunate at the club that I'm at to be able to see that sort of thing at quite a high standard, but it was just how I might apply that, because I suspect at the competitions that I'm at or will start going to, hopefully, there might not be as much in terms of video footage. And in terms of my own video footage, to be quite honest, it's looking through the potential hours of the stuff that I can get on EJU and stuff like that, and I just haven't really had the time to have a look at it.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, I think it sounds like in terms of your coaching side of things, it's maybe a bit limited in terms of what you're doing at the moment, but for yourself, more beneficial. Cool. Gareth.
Hi.
How are you doing, Gareth?
Not so bad. So I'd try to think about one of the players at our club who is sort of fairly high level, junior, very strong right-hander, got a really good Uchimata and Tayatoshi, but struggles to actually get them in, particularly against left-handed players. So if you've got a strong left-handed player coming over the top, sort of struggles to get in to the right position for those throws. So thinking about sort of strategies that we could use, either to break that up and change the position completely. So whether that's breaking the grip, developing a couple of left-handed techniques to use, so he's able to pin the sleeve and actually take a strong left-handed grip instead. Or if it's a case of using his Ashiwaza just to create a little bit of space, square him up a little bit so that he's able to turn in rather than having them sort of oblique to him all the time.
Yeah. So you're looking at different sort of angles of movement, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And I think you'll be able to spot those kind of things quite readily when you're able to use video for it as well, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once we're getting back on the mat.
Well, yeah. Eventually.
Yeah.
At some point. Fingers crossed in the not too distant future. Cheers, Gareth.
Thanks.
Right, I'm going to just make a point now, because this is obviously taking a little bit longer than it would have done if I'd been able to divide us up. This is being recorded, and I appreciate Nick, who introduced you at the start, might need to shoot off for his dinner at some point because he's been coaching right before this. if anybody does need to shoot off and has already had the chance to speak, then it is being recorded and you'll be able to watch this back later. So yeah, if you do need to jump off, feel free. If you want to stay on, I'm here as long as it takes to get through everybody, because it's my fault that we couldn't get the breakout rooms working. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there for you as things are. And we'll try and get through everybody who hasn't actually had a chance just yet. Jeff. I think you're muted, Jeff.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Hey, how are you, mate? You all right?
Good man, thank you.
Good. Very quick. Coaching a big club, and we've got a wide range of people from wild 15-year-old, 16-year-old juniors going for their downgrades, right up to masters who are competing at pretty high levels, you know, world championships and Europeans. But it's the masters that I wanted to focus on, because often they've worked without coaches previously.
Yeah.
And when you go to support them, it's old dogs, new tricks. And so one of the things we've been doing is looking at the number of attacks in each minute of the bouts that they're fighting in, looking at the combinations of the attack, and looking at their old habits, which are often sometimes not lazy, but well practiced and they're comfortable with.
You make a great politician, Jeff.
So that the other thing is, because they've been there, done that, got the T-shirt, they're really hard to dissuade from what they think are tried and tested stuff. So tendencies to turtle and stay in a turtle for a long time, that kind of stuff. And so we're using video footage and raw data, counting actual numbers of attacks, counting numbers of combinations, counting ones that are effective, whether they've had both hands on them when they try to throw, or whether they've just done a lazy attack to just put something in. And that's been quite an. The other thing is they twitch. I think they put a full-blown attack in.
Yeah.
But that happens with all of us as we get older, I know. But that is a particular way. They think, well, I've been fighting I fought all the way through, and you say, actually, no. If you look at the video, there's a little twitch there. That's not a full attack.
Yeah, that's a really good point you make there, actually, Jeff. And it's something that I've had to consider in my work, is what constitutes a genuine attempt to throw.
Yeah,
that's what it is for me, and I'd see it even at the sort of elite level of people who aren't as old as the masters guys, who are maybe not moving as freely as they used to. You definitely see that, and yeah, it's good to set out those principles for what constitutes the thing that you're measuring. So that's a really important point you just made there.
They're also, you know, they're really good guys. They know their judo, and they're not idiots by any means.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, they're very, very capable judo players, but just, you know, old habits hit us all, don't they? And it's old dogs, new tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'm fascinated by is feedback, and how you give feedback without first you don't want to deflate them, then you don't want to insult them, or patronize them. So I always try and start with a positive, and what they did well in the event, how things, you know, whether fitness was up, whether they were good, whether they put a lot of energy in, and then the critical bit, and then the bit for improvement afterwards. And then I always think that's a nice way of packaging it, really.
Yeah, I think when you've got to be critical, you've got to be careful about how you are, don't you?
Yeah. Especially when you've known them a long time, they don't take any notice.
That's it. They won't think twice about hammering you in the next randori session.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Good stuff. Cheers, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Guy Flatten. Saw you earlier. There you are.
Can you hear me now?
I can now. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, I started coaching. I came back and I started coaching my daughter when she was about 8. She's now 20 now in the seniors. Taking it all through the various levels, and I've got involved with various clubs on the way. and I've made loads of mistakes. So I've learned from those. And I can see lots of points that everyone else has mentioned. I think the basics, I always start with the basics, and that would be the warm-up is before. So because I want a level playing field, every time they walk on the mat and they bowed on, that's the level playing field, the warm-up, then the posture, hands up, and then that's the square I want to start. Because if they're not doing that, they're in a gunfight, you know, trying to draw from down holster level. And then I'd set parameters and targets within the club training. Okay, your hands weren't up, you didn't move forward, you didn't do this, you didn't, and then sort of set them targets, get them to sort of reevaluate themselves, and then hopefully create habits that they can take to like a camp or open randori sessions elsewhere. And then that's where you start to actually get the data. I found competitions a bit misleading sometimes, because when they start breaking into competitions and they're seeded, if they're just breaking in, they're going to meet number 1 seed or number 2 seed, yeah, pretty early on. And you know, it's about, you have to concentrate on those basics and then trying to do what they can to stay in the mix, and then they build up that confidence and work on it. So you know, once they're in there, then you start looking at specifics about you know left, right, over the top, all that sort of stuff.
Really good point there about evaluating the context in which you're working. So it's something that every fight I record data for, I record the ranking of their opponent on the day. So it gives us the context of where they were sitting in comparison to that opponent at the time. And yeah, it gives you a better idea of the level of performance, even though if you haven't won, if you've won enough exchanges against somebody.
Yeah, exactly. First the grip, get in the position, able to attack. You know,
yeah.
You might have gone out on Shidos because you've forgotten about the mat area, or you know this, that, and the other, or you've gripped the inside of the jacket or something silly like that, and you just you can lose it in silly ways. Or you might have had a moment's, you've constructed the fight really well, but you've had just a moment's lapse and lost. But there's a lot of great stuff in there.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for that, Guy. Who have we got next? I think it's Howard. In fact, I think Howard said he was going. I think he had to jump out. Yeah, I think Howard said he had to jump out. So we'll move on to Hugh. Hugh Johns.
Hi, can you hear me?
Can indeed.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I started using Coach's Eye and been videoing the players at fighting for the last sort of 6 or 7 months prior to lockdown. One of my players was always getting beaten by one of the girls. So when I looked at the videos, I could see she was being dominated with a right hand over the top. So we worked on a strategy to prevent that and try and, so initially we started moving away from that grip to make it more difficult for her to get a grip. Then we started working on trying to frustrate that grip more, not just with movement, but with our grips. And that was working quite well. The fights were getting longer and longer before my player was being beaten. And then we started working on a counter from that position when the hand comes over the top. Great left hand Ogoshi. And just before lockdown, my player beat the other players for the first time, which is quite refreshing and quite positive. Makes me think I'm doing the right things. So yeah, it's been very good. I use Coach's Eye, which one of the other players coaches mentioned, which I find very good. A good low cost starting point. And yeah, we're doing quite well with it. I'm just starting along this journey.
Yeah, brilliant, you. That sounds perfect. You're using video, you're using analysis tools, and you're clearly making progress. So
and the other thing is, I always get the parents from the other side of the match who are taping to send me the videos so that I can analyze them later.
Yeah.
So that's parents are always taping.
Yeah.
So actually, I don't need to do it. I need to focus on the competition and the fight.
Yeah,
make sure
really handy to have that help. Really handy to have that help. Nice one, Hugh. And you got the same name as one of my favourite Scottish rugby players, so extra kudos to you. Okay, who we got next? Ian.
Right, is it me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, can hear you.
I'll put the video on as well, so you can see my ugly face. There we are. And we won at the weekend as well, didn't we?
Yes, won for the first time in 38 years.
I better be careful because I'm living down in England now. So, yeah.
Can I remove you?
Sorry, what was that?
So I can remove you.
Oh, right.
I'm only joking.
No.
Jackie Weaver.
So I've sort of got mainly a recreational club, but I've had a few players who have come through, one at national level and stuff like that. But I sort of focused on my young man who's he's 100 kilo, under 100 kilo player, and a lot of people have mentioned that already. The biggest problem he's got is he's heavy enough, but stature-wise, he's smaller than a lot of the other 100 kilo players. So the main thing we've used the performance analysis for is to try and, again, it's this thing of the grip over the top, how to avoid it, and get in with an attack to unsettle the other player before he gets too dominated with the grip. So we've watched a lot of the videos that we've taken. Now, I mean, some of the other people have said, I like to video from the coach's chair. It's not always ideal because the referees get in the bloody way sometimes, but I tend to use a GoPro as well because it gives you the wide angle. So you don't have to move it. With other video cameras, you sometimes have to move. If they move off the edge of the mat, you've missed it. But with the GoPro, I can just balance it on the side. The wide angle gives you the full picture, which is quite good. But what we've done is we have used that video analysis to work on a few things. Is one, you know already that you're going to be gripped over the top, so don't think of it as a surprise. I didn't realize he was going to come up. You know it's going to happen all the time, so you're ready to try and catch that hand, whatever hand is coming over. And that's with the scouting of the players. You know the player's right, he's right, it's that right hand's going to come over the top, so you're ready to either catch it and move, and that's one of the things we worked on that benefited it, because I think maybe particularly with young men, they think they're strong, they can muscle it out, and too static. So the other thing was looking at the videos to say, look, when did you get thrown? Every time you stop still, that's when the guy attacked you and you get thrown. So you've got to be you've consciously got to be moving all the time. You know, it doesn't have to be necessarily to put an attack in, but you cannot afford to stand still because that's when you're going to be caught. So we used that to then set up drills at club where we could get some other willing volunteers to set those scenarios up, and so Matthew was in a sense pressure trained. I shouldn't say the name, I suppose, but basically he's out the front and you can put fresh players at him all the time, so it puts him under a bit of pressure. So he has to be consciously working on the particular drill that we're setting up to get him going. And then one of the other things we used it for as well, as we said, for a lot of these bigger guys or taller guys, you're not always going to be able to throw them. Think of Newaza. So we started working on a sort of Hara Tesoro Kumashi to get them to the ground. So if you get a grip, Ashiwaza, knock them to the ground and work on your Newaza rather than staying up top all the time and thinking you can throw them for the big ippon. Work to your strengths as well as, you know, so that sort of thing. So that's one of the things that we've used performance analysis to work on some better strategies.
Nice one, Ian. Yeah, so that to me sounds like a good blend of checking out your opposition and knowing what to expect, but also making sure that whatever you learn from that, what does that mean for what we're good at?
Yeah.
Nice one. Good stuff. Jay Paynes, I think, is next.
Hello, good evening.
How are we doing?
Good. I'm split between two clubs. I just got my level 1 last a couple years ago, but I mainly help out as a assistant coach. So I haven't really taken part in the collection of videos, but had many conversations with the different coaches on how they observe the other players. Some of the players compete national and even European. I'm talking like the junior level. And well, my example is going to be mainly for myself as I compete in the Masters, because most of the conversation obviously helped me progress, because I started judo quite late compared to many people, since 2012. From many observations from my coaches was obviously my defensive mode that I have developed, and that allowed me to try and find a strength, because one of my favorite techniques is Tayatoshi. But although I do not manage to execute it during the competition, I managed to execute a lot of Ashiwaza techniques. And my coaches just focus on that, and that allowed me to develop like the Uranagi and try to get into a reverse Ipponsei Nagi. And with all of those advice, it helped me improve, and I'm much more attacking. And they also realized over time that my gripping technique, I don't break grips. I tend to readjust my grip. Although I'm right-handed, I tend to go for a left-hand lapel. And even though I go compete against someone who's a opposite grip, I tend to readjust my stance, and I'm quite comfortable with either side of the opposition. And well, I'm gonna say that's it for now, but at the moment I'm observing international judo players who have similar abilities. Well, it's a far-fetched comparison, but recently in the Doha competition, there was the Georgian in the under 100, Lapar Tiliani. And
example,
yeah. I enjoy the way he competes, and to Inoue. And, I've been observing the videos of his competition. What I observe is mainly like he doesn't attack with the Ashiwazas. He tends to try to get his lapel grip. And one of his other downfall is that he doesn't have anything planned for overhand grips. So a lot of the competition managed to get him on the back heel because of that. So one of the ideas, like from your segment last week, was to, if I was in that case, what would I do? Well, I was looking at obviously Ashiwaza technique. He's a Guruma, one of them. And then his Newaza was really good because he keep following the players and engaging them on the ground. And just focus on some choking technique, Hadakajime, and then like the Surikomi Goshi technique. Because obviously, like one of the person previously, they mentioned that you try not to patronize the players, so to work with what they know and they feel very comfortable with.
Yeah.
You try to add extra technique or engage them into evolving their strategies.
I think what's clearly worked with you is building on your strengths. So your Ashiwaza was your strength, which is going to help you open up everything else. So, yeah, good start, that one. Thanks for that, Jay.
No problem.
Jad Harris.
Come on, unmute. Hi there.
You're
All
on.
right. So like a lot of the others that have spoken earlier, I coach mostly kids. I have been getting the parents to send me videos of those that do compete quite a while. So thank you very much. You gave me a perfect opportunity to go down the rabbit hole of watching a load of videos of competition and reminding myself what it's like to do something that isn't the other side of a video screen. I focused on one particular lad that's on the border. Well, before lockdown, he was on the border of pre-cadet. I've no idea where he's going to be when we get back to competing. And looked at a number of his videos over a couple of competitions. And I saw some very clear patterns. Struggles sometimes to get his second hand on, and then he sort of throws in wildly for his big technique before he's got full control. So he's either he loses control and loses his balance, or he does it so often that his opponent knows what's coming before he's got enough control to do it. What I also noted is it failed when he had his grips on. He's very, very good at reversing to an ashiwaza from a forward technique. So going for a koichi or an ouchi off of a big forward throw. So I looked at what we could do to build on that. Obviously, when, if ever, we're allowed to grip up again, we can practice on getting his grips on faster. But in the meantime, I'm going to look at things on maintaining his balance better and trying to keep his posture when he's moving in, whether he's doing it with uchikomi bands or shadow or whatever, so that we get to a point where he's heading towards less wild attacks and much more control as he goes. And I would obviously be monitoring that by when he is back in competition, whether he's getting scoring or at least completing throw techniques, even if they turn out in the landing, more regularly and less where he's just dropping because they've overbalanced him forward, and getting the improved grip dominance so that he's got more chance of getting his big techniques in, because when he does throw with them, they're really nice throws. But also, as we get to the point where he's got that control, an improved use, like improving maybe his use of feinting for his big attack and actually taking the smaller ashiwaza as the follow-up to it. It was very interesting to look at and say it was really nice to just lose myself in a bit of a rabbit hole of kids doing judo, which feels like a very long time ago. Yet some of them were only from the February just before lockdown last year.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, as you say, it's as frustrating as anything trying to actually think about when we'll actually be able to do it again. But yeah, good work on that. And I think what you've identified is that there's a good response to be able to attack to the rear when the big forward attack doesn't work, and therefore that could become your new preparation for the big forward attack, is that you use that attack to the rear to set it up. If the movement works one way, it can work the other. So again, I think that's you're one of several people that's highlighted that need for options that open other things up. Nice one. Thanks, Jed. Jamie Gargett.
Hi, mate. Thanks. There's been some really good feedback on here, so I'll keep mine brief, as also wasn't here last week, and I'll be quite generic. Really, a lot of what I do is with cadet level players, national, and going across to Europe as well. And it's really around sort of applying analysis to the level of player you're working with. Mindset is crucial, and getting them to fight their own fight and own their own judo, rather than mimicking something we may have given them input with. And again, just cutting across onto the importance of prep, entry, and execution, and then looking at why it worked, why it didn't work, what can be improved on, what can't be improved on, and really looking around the analysis of the mindset and the psychological aspects of the game as well. Preparing before we get to the event, knowing what to expect when we get to the event, and if these guys are going to go on and go off with the full-time squad, exposing them to that level of competition before they get there can be helpful as well. So I haven't really got anything else to add that other people have said. There's been some really good feedback, and I'll shut up now. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jamie. Right, another Jamie Williams.
I suppose I better have a good response for this one. So,
Yeah, plenty to chat.
So I'm not actually a coach, but I am lucky enough to be on an internship that our dear Chris was on a few years ago. So I'm working with Scottish Rugby at the moment as an intern and doing performance analysis. And I've just finished my master's in sports science last year, which I did. I've done judo for 25 years. So working with Judo Scotland, I did a project on sort of like the rate of attacks, intensity, density versus their strength and conditioning data. And we've got some nice numbers back from it. But what I've kind of been doing this last week now is revisiting the data that I collected. I think I analysed maybe almost 200 fights across a pool of 8 fighters, which was only over 2 tournaments. So it's quite easy to get a lot of data quite quickly. Taking the significant attack data that we had, and initially I had it down as per win, but it's kind of misleading. You can have an athlete that comes on and just throws off the grip immediately, and that's one significant attack against a win. So I've started to kind of convert that to per minutes fought. And now what I'm also doing, and I'm lucky I have access to some really good software like Huddle Sports Code. And so what I'm trying to do now is put the attacks into zones on the map. So pretty much the center of the map versus the edge of the map, and see where the athletes are winning and losing, how they are dealing with being under pressure on the edge of the mat and so on. So my next plan with that is, because of the project and the data that I was getting and stuff, I built up a good relationship with some of the athletes. I'm still on the Scottish squad myself, so I know them pretty well. So my plan then is to take 1 or 2 of them, and with their coaches who I also know quite well, most of the coaches I used to compete with back in the day, I'm hoping to kind of go over the fights with them. And I think it's nice to have performance analysis, but to give context to the quality of the attacks, especially when you were discussing what's a twitch and what's an actual genuine attack, it applies differently to different fighters due to their style, perhaps the weight, the style of the category of the fighting, like the lightweights versus the heavyweights. Heavyweights throw in 100 times more false attacks just to avoid getting penalised by the ref when they're knackered. Guilty of that myself. So that was one approach, was to kind of review the data that I've got with the athletes and the coaches. I don't actually coach. I do have my level 1 coach, but I think this might be a useful tool to enhance my own coaching opportunities, or just learn to kind of see from a coach's eye, because I still think like an athlete. I don't ever think like a coach. So it'd be interesting to review this stuff with the coaches and sort of see what they're seeing, see their insight, and compare it with what I've got. The other interesting approach that I'm coming out with some of the data as well is, and I'd like to do this with Randori as well, this competition data, is start to get data on attack rate, but then with athletes, build up long-term data. But with athletes coming back from injury, I'd like to kind of almost have a sort of return to play model where you say ACL injury, and say they used to put in 3-4 attacks per minute of competition or per minute of Randori. They say they're not ready to come back to competition, and the physios say they're ready. I've been there myself actually with the competence league, but you can actually show them, here's your data before you get injured, here's you after successful recovery. We can see that you're ready to return to competition, and it's a kind of useful tool to show them their own data and their own video, and that was inspired by, I think it was Leinster Rugby, who say an under-21s player approached the manager and was just like, I think I'm good enough to get in the team. My parents, my friends, my old club tell me I'm good enough to get into the senior team. Why not? So they've sat him down with the strength and conditioning coach, and they said, this is what Brian O'Driscoll is hitting in the gym. This is what he's hitting in the pitch. This is your data, and this is what you're doing at under-21, and showing him that he still had a sort of bridge the gap. So it's that. So that's kind of what inspired that return to competition kind of idea. So yeah, I'm kind of coming from top down to the bottom towards the simple kind of aspects of the analysis. But it's quite useful, like Bill Baker's example earlier on, talking about just using footage to kind of understand who his opponents might be. And just, I remember doing the same as a youngster with my dad, looking at footage, and we knew every opponent I had, if they were left or right-handed, if they were going to counter or if they were going to attack. And at the youth level or at kids level judo, that was quite good. I'm pretty sure that back in the day, I probably did that with my younger brothers when they were fighting you and Minimons. So it just shows it doesn't have to be as complicated as what I'm coming at, but it's still a useful tool. So yeah, there's been some really good examples coming from everybody so far, so I've enjoyed that. But yeah, so that's me.
Yeah, so there's a good example of having a bit more resource at your disposal and looking at things a bit differently and maybe a bit more in depth, but then equally being able to scale it back to the more simple stuff. So yeah, I'd many a battle with your younger brothers. Thankfully not with you. You were a bit bigger than me.
Well, Aaron's bigger than me now, so yeah.
I'll be worried because I don't think I've grown at all. Right, cheers, Jamie. Thanks for that. Really good examples there. Janice and Kelvin.
Hiya.
How you doing?
All right, I'm good, thanks. And you?
Yeah, well, thanks.
Awesome. To be honest with you, I used to compete a very long time ago, so I wanted to see how it changed and use that to develop my coach. And I very rarely go to competitions nowadays because I teach in schools. I do the odd thing with competitions with the club and also Kelvin, my son. But primarily I'm working in schools judo, and therefore it's not at that level where we're going to be doing that. Primarily I'm looking at sort of them enjoying their judo and that they then enjoy it and then they move on to the club. We've lost a few children from school to dojo. So I've been looking at, and was due to start before lockdown, a club night so that we could do school to dojo so that we didn't lose them and we could gradually progress them along like that. So what Kelvin and I did for our homework was we looked at the Doho Masters under 90 final because that's Kelvin's weight category, and we analysed the first 2 minutes. So I'll let Kelvin about that.
Yeah, we looked at the final as well because you mentioned looking at what the best do and seeing what they're doing and how they can improve, or what, just looking at that. So it was between Georgian called Gia Nashvili or something and Noel Van End. And Van End basically dominated throughout the whole fight. He just got his right hand on the lapel and then stopped the Georgian from getting any sort of top grip, which he was really trying to do. And when the Georgian basically got his hand on the top or tried to break the Dutch guy's grip, he just threw any sort of attack in, like a quick left attack to break any momentum, and he never really let, in terms of what the Georgian could have done better, is just try and get gripped up and get some sort of attacking, because he never really attacked. And for the Dutch guy, I mean, obviously it's a final, but he took the most of the 4 minutes to win. So as he did dominate, he's trying to maybe get the win quicker. That's something he could improve on. But
yeah, I think that's a good example. Is that's a complete and utter clash of styles, those two. Gviniashvili, the Georgian you're talking about, he's very much likes to be in close using his hips, whereas Van Ten wants you to chase him all day long so that he can drop underneath you and throw you.
Yeah.
That's the reason. The reason the Georgian wasn't able to do it is because Van Ten is so good at doing that. And yeah, it's a good contrast to look at that. And Van Ten's not world champion for no reason. So good example of looking at the world class examples. Two really high performing fighters and the different clashing styles and what problems they caused each other. Good lessons to learn there. Thanks for that, guys.
Thank you.
Who have we got next? Joe Savage.
Now then, you all right?
How you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thank you.
So I'm quite inexperienced in I'm early days in my coaching thing, so that's one of the reasons why I'm on. But one of the things that our head coach seems to implement in our club is if a child, because a lot of our competitors at the minute at an early age, so you're talking around 10 years old. So what he kinds to implement at the minute sometimes is if a child's struggling with a particular throw, whether it's Osoto Gary and they're getting countered with it all the time, in Randori, he'll ban that throw for that child. So it makes them think about other techniques. But every now and again, what he'll throw in, he'll ban certain throws. So it gets the children thinking about, rather than just the same couple of techniques all the time that works for them. It kind of, you know, builds their repertoire at an early age, so they can build up a range of techniques for as they're developing as they get older. So that's one of the things that we look at. We haven't got much in ways of software. It's just more observation, and then obviously whether it's cameras with your phones and stuff like that, and looking back on that as well. But one thing that he did in particular for my daughter before lockdown last year, the original lockdown, the competition before that, she was, in particular, she's quite short, text after me and her mum, and so a lot of the arms coming over the top. So what we started building on from there is scenarios. One, stopping that grip coming over. Two, if that grip's connected, breaking it off. And then three, also, if you can't break that grip off, techniques from when they've got the arm over the top. So it's so she doesn't get in future, whenever we can compete again, so she doesn't get scared or uncomfortable in that position. If she ever gets in that position, she's comfortable that she can deal with it, and it's developing that from there as well. So we just keep practicing sort of different scenarios, and that's where we take it from there, really.
Good stuff. Sounds like a good strategy of breaking it down, and sort of you're looking at three different things. Breaking things into threes is something that I always try and do. So yeah, good start. Thanks, Joe. John. Struggling to find that unmute button. I wonder if I can unmute you too. Oh, there you are.
Here I am. I coach mainly, well, nearly everyone I coach is a senior, right up to number one, down to beginners. A lot of people in from foreign countries and many years experience coaching VIs. So because of that, I spent a long time doing analysis, not only of my players, but also mainly of the competitors that are going to come against. What I've found with the analysis when breaking down is important to break it down frame by frame, literally before anything starts. For instance, breaking down one of my players, right-handed fighter, as soon as the race got on, he'll take a footstep to the left. And I watched that over and over and over again over a number of fights. I pulled it up on him by becoming his hooky for a second, and then I done exactly the same as him, but I stepped to the right, so we impacted on each other straight away, and it threw him off completely, just by that first step. This was before any grips or anything else. Obviously, working with the VIs, you've got no grip problems because they're gripping up first. But what you've got to be able to do with them, and I've noticed with video analysis, when you break it down, obviously you've got to be very descriptive in what you're doing. I noticed last week you're sticking a gi on and going on with the VIs. But what they can interpret and what they interpret a lot more, which you can't necessarily get from the analysis, is the feeling of that movement. Obviously, as sighted coaches and players, we can say, right, watch this, this is where it's going. But when you break down a video analysis for VIs, it's feeling where that's going. You know, that grip might be on, but which hand is actually the strongest one? We all know that when a fighter steps forward, they'll come forward first with their strongest arm. And if it's a right-handed player, 9 times out of 10, it'll be that lapel grip they're going for. And obviously, if you can stop that and grab that sleeve, then they've lost their strength. That might be their strongest part, and it's literally stopping that getting on in the first place. Also, when you break down the analysis, when I'm watching it, the first person that's got them 2 grips on them, 2 hands on, wherever they are, whether it's their favourite grip or not, they're the one that 9 times out of 10 is getting the throw. I don't really need to talk for hours because you've got a lot of people to get through. But that's what I broke down, and it has worked. You know, I've applied it. At the moment, I'm working online with a VI player and trying to help him out, even though I'm not actually his personal coach from his club, because he hasn't got a club, as we all haven't at the minute. But I'm working with him online and trying to describe to him analysis over. Funny enough, I just got a message saying he's meant to be going to Germany if it's on. Anyway, good luck to you all. Enjoy your videos. There you are. Over to you.
Cheers, John. Yeah, that's a good contrast to make to how you can apply it to VI or sighted individuals differently. And as you said, yeah, I step on the mat with a gi on with the VI guys quite a lot. Not so much now because we've got to socially distance when we're in coaching, but yeah, it's definitely a good way of helping them understand it. And obviously you have different levels of visual impairment as well, so some of them maybe can benefit more from video than others, and you can work with what you've got there. But yeah, a good example of understanding the feel of something as well as what it might look like. So yeah, really good. Thanks for that, John. Jordan.
Yeah, so I was having a look at some of my own contests from Dan Gradings, and I think the main one that struck out to me was I had a scenario when I had a Juji, I had the arm fully outstretched but managed to lose it in there. So obviously I was then trying to have a look at other scenarios, either on like the IGF level or where obviously they get to a similar position and they're having to work for the finish. So far from having a look at that, it seems most of the time at the high level, as soon as they've got the arm straight, it's already on there. So it's potentially just be going back to the club later on and trying to get to that position with someone that can kind of tough it out a bit to try finishing it from that end range.
Yeah. So you're noticing that last little bit missing and then trying to figure out the way to make that a bit better. Yeah. Nice one.
Question from Lisa, Chris, in the chat
Yeah,
box.
I've just spotted that. So I was going to reply in the chat, but I'll just say it instead. It's probably easier, isn't it? So yeah, in terms of psychological stuff, you can actually put some stats behind it, but you have to be really careful about how you measure psychological things. And so it really helps if you've got access to a psychologist, which isn't always the case. The way that I would tend to approach that if you don't have that kind of access would be to use your usual analysis on your stats and all that, and that psychological thing will come out as part of the conversation you then have with the fighter afterwards. So your data will still be your data, but as I said in the presentation, it helps you ask the questions. And once you ask the questions, if you understand the psychology of your fighter, then you're able to, I suppose, adapt that to them, and then look at how they can then approach the fight differently psychologically, as well as all the physical and tactical and technical elements that come with it. So yeah, really good question, Lisa. Yeah, well worth asking. Where were we now? So Carl, I think, is the next one on the list.
Hi, are you okay?
How are you doing, Carl?
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, so I don't do a massive amount of coaching in the club. I tend to do the competition coaching purely and simply because the head coach has lessons every single day. I don't do much with analytical data, but what we do is video with competitions. I'll watch the opponents beforehand and sort of give the girls, there's only 4 girls in the competition squad, I'll give them tips on what's likely to happen, so they've got something to look out for. We'll video it, and then it'll go into a group chat between the 4 girls and Craig, the head coach. And the girls will tend to give their feedback on the other girls' fights, if that makes sense. So it's the way we see it is that the other competitors, the other 3 girls, kind of learning by critiquing. Say, my one daughter will fight, the other 3 girls will critique her fight. Not over the top, but enough that they're learning, and she's also getting constructive feedback from her peers, as opposed to being sort of told what she's done wrong by the coaches, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Really good use of that peer group. And I think that's just one of several examples of people doing that so far in the chat, which is really good to hear, because as you say, being told by your coach that you need to be better at something isn't often necessarily taken the same way as if your peers are out there feeling it and experiencing it the same way, and they have that sort of exchange of information between each other on each other's performances. Yeah, that can be really helpful.
And I mean, that obviously, because there's only the 4 girls, they're all quite tight. So nobody really takes offense if one of them says, well, yeah, you could have done a bit better there. Nobody will take offense at it. But, you know, where if I say it, particularly as a father, you know, I'm on the naughty step then for a couple of days because I had to go up there, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've managed that really well. That's a really good way of doing that. So great example. Cheers, Carl.
Well, thanks.
Kelsey.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Kelsey.
Hi. So I
Can't hear you very well there, I'm afraid.
try and change my mic.
You're off mute, but you're just a bit quiet, I think. Maybe hold the mic a bit closer. Or...
Can you hear me now?
That's a bit clearer, yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. So I mainly work with sort of the middling teenage years. So they're just starting to take their competition seriously. They're starting to get into that period where we want them to film all their fights. We want to watch them back. So yeah, what we encourage everyone to fights. We encourage them to watch them back, but not only that, but we can give them some feedback on it as well. So one of the boys he's a lot taller than everyone. He's just had a massive growth spurt, and so he struggles with basically finding where all of his limbs are still. So it can lead to bits where his judo is just a bit messy at times. We just try and focus on getting to concentrate on what he's doing, rather than getting anything else in there.
Yeah, so looking at being a bit more deliberate.
Yeah. It's worked well for him. He's gotten much more sort of he's gotten much better with his technique.
Yeah.
And besides that, it's focusing then on his gripping, because he's gone from being relatively short, relatively close into everyone. He still wants to fight like that. So much lower that he's just getting into an Aggie or a hip throw.
Yeah.
Getting to control the space a bit more.
That's good. That's good work. Is good example of being able to use video as well to help, because when he's had that growth spurt and he's trying to still do things the same way he always did, it doesn't necessarily make sense that it's not going to work until he sees how awkward it looks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a really good example.
Cool.
Cheers for that, Kelsey. I think we're on to Laura.
Hi.
Hey, Laura.
Hi. I've worked with lots of different age groups over the years, coaching. At the moment, I've got quite young ones. But one thing going back to my own personal experience of being a player, one thing I was always encouraged to do way back when was to write a training diary after training sessions and randois. So reflecting back on what you did well, what worked well, especially like if you've gone on with players that you were the same weight category as you could pick up lots of tips on what they were doing and how they were doing it and how you reacted. So it became quite a learning experience. So I like to try and get the kids to say what they thought they did well, what they thought they didn't do well, be a bit more self-reflective. Also like watch they like the videos. I've got several children, young ones in the class that are quite hyperactive. So by me keep changing the session quite a lot, it keeps them engaged. But then if you put a video and it's them, they'll watch it because it's them on the TV. So you can kind of, I find that works really well with that category of players, and just saying, look at what you did, look, and then we break it down and then go back on the mat and try and work out different ways. And some of them are quite, as I say, their attention span's quite short. So then I'll try and pick something that they can do that maybe break down the movement, so that say you're doing a Kuri Ashibari foot sweep or di Ashibari, you could use a sock and then you say try and sweep your foot across the floor as if you're side kicking a football, because most of them know how to do that, just to get some sort of movement patterns and then put it into their judo. Obviously at the moment we're doing quite a lot of that, doing the Zoom classes. It's all like use whatever you've got, but I find that works really well. And I find, like I say, the training diary and the videos and watching things back really, really helpful.
Yeah, that reflective practice is really helpful. It's I don't know how much I described last week, but when we're talking about fight plans and stuff, our fight plans are essentially our brief and our debrief.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have a plan for how we're going to fight somebody, and then we'll debrief against the plan. So if you've got your notes on what you did really well or what you struggled with and you want to be better at, having that to brief and debrief against next time are really helpful.
Also used to find it helpful to have like a player profile against people. So as soon as you come off competition, write down whether right-handed, left-handed, particularly if there was somebody new. And this is going back to the days where we didn't all have a phone, because I am that old. Going, so you could then got something to refer to. If you're going to another competition, you go, oh yeah, I fought them like a couple of months ago, and you've got something there, right-handed, left-handed, that sort of thing. I found that really helpful.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks for that, Laura.
Thank you.
Liam.
Hi, Chris. You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, Liam. You?
Yeah, spot on. So, I have in my club, we have like a range of competitors from all the way from minor to senior level. So it sort of differs between how I use video analysis. So say currently with more so like minors, pre-cadets, some cadets, I'm using video analysis over Zoom. So we'll do like a Zoom session of judo and fitness and stuff. But I get them to like analyze. So I'll share my screen, put a video of any particular judo player, who I did last week. I think might have been Fonseca. I just get them to break it down and look at it. So tell me what throws they're doing, what grips they're looking at, how they might set the techniques up. So it's like keeping them engaged within judo at the moment, but also making them think about when it comes to when they're a bit older and they might have to analyze their own contests. They'll have a bit of prior background knowledge to help them. And I say mainly when they get a bit older, and I'm working with some of the older players, I'll analyze a video of the contest, but I'll also sort of get them to do it as well. So I'll get a bit of like athlete buy-in, so they can share their ideas with mine, and so it's the more likely to sort of do what I ask them, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, that's it. If they understand that it's not just you rabbiting on about something, it's coming from each other as well, it helps, doesn't it? And I think when you're using those world-class examples and you're analyzing again against them, you're understanding principles of judo, and then you can apply those principles to your coaching.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Nice one. Cheers for that, Liam. Really good insight, that. Martin. Not many left now, guys.
Hey, Chris.
How you doing, Martin?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. Yeah, I didn't go last week, but I managed to get in on YouTube and have a look at what was going on. Really, really interesting. One of the things that at the moment with the Zoom sessions is actually looking what people are doing online with Zoom, with like Uchikomi and footsteps, foot patterns. So that's something that we've been analysing. I've been doing some work. Well, I've been being analysed myself by Steve Pullen. So it's been bit of a hard task over the last few months. But again, when I've taken the sessions for him, just looking what people are doing, the way they're stepping, the way they're moving, Uchikomi bands, making sure they've got it right, because it all leads to the final thing when we get back on the mat, that we're going to go back and we're still going to have that movement there. And in fact, I think that it's actually improving a lot of people's works, the way that their steps are going at the moment. And by that, analysing what's going on and feeding back, I think that's a good way of keeping things going while we're in lockdown.
Yeah.
It's also given me a chance this week to have a look at a few competitions while I was at work, while I had the odd 5 minutes, just seeing what's on the internet and having a look around. So it's been quite interesting to think about the ways that I'm looking at I perform and the ways that players that I've coached and worked with perform. So yeah. It's really good.
That's a fantastic example of silver linings, I have to say, Martin. Finding the positives in what is an otherwise less than enjoyable situation. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to look at a little bit more of the specific technical things, because you'll often get so caught up in trying to throw somebody that you forget about your preparation or your movement and everything beforehand. So yeah, really good example of being able to do something using video in the situation that we're all stuck in at the moment. Nicely done. Cheers, Martin. Right, who we got next? Matthew.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, so thinking on from last week, rather than a certain judoka, I sort of a certain event came back to my mind, where I had two young players enter. For both of them, it was their first competition outside of a one-mat interclub. So it was just that sort of next step up for them, and both of them actually end up making the same sort of mistake. They were getting themselves in for that first attack, but then they were being countered backwards. And I found it quite interesting, the fact that it both happened with both of them in a few of their contests. So using the good old-fashioned pen and paper, just made notes of it during as the contests were happening. Obviously, as you do, talk to them between contests, but at the ages of 8 and 10, they're not really that interested in listening to you at that time. So what I did from that was then basically set up the next session, set the session plan around getting them used to a bit more to those counter techniques, to make them more aware of, actually, okay, even when you're back in the club, if you don't get that balance broken, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to end up being taken backwards. So I sort of tried to work it that way. I think moving forward, I think investing in a camera of some sort so that they can see themselves what's happening, I think will be a more longer term plan.
Yeah, that sounds like a good strategy, and it's well recognized from your own sort of more basic way of looking at things with your pen and paper, which is, for me, it's a great start, because you didn't have a camera available, you did what you could with what you had. So great start. You've recognized.
I would try and take from each contest, try and take one positive thing from it and one sort of learning thing from it. To sort of feedback and say, look, you've done this really well. When we get back to the club, we just need to work on this, and just try and build it up from that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Cheers, Matthew. Mike.
Good evening, and first and foremost, thanks very much, both yourself and Nick, for the 2 sessions. Anyway, yeah, it's going back on what a lot of people have actually said recently with the well, from my player's point of view, the one I've actually started analysing, was it's the opposite. Everyone's been going on about the person underneath the high grip and being dominated by a high grip. It's actually my player that was taking the high grip and kept getting beaten off of that. So it was something she wasn't overly happy about, kept getting caught with each and every time. She wasn't always losing from Ippon, but it was something that she recognised herself that was an issue. So we took it back to the dojo, had a look on the video again. Something that we used was Coach's Eye. Went through basically initially it was asking for her feedback. What felt good? What felt bad? Why do you think this happened? Why did that happen? And normally the answers were quite responsive, and she was doing half the job for me, which is great. But once we started looking with the coaches, I would try to recreate that around Dory's perspective as well. So we try and recreate that with a partner of similar size, similar weight, and go through the whole scenario as what we've already filmed, bang that onto the app, watch it back, and trying to analyze it that way and see what we could actually correct. So whether it was tightening the grip up to stop what was it? She kept getting Ogoshi mainly. Was that she kept getting caught with over from the high grip. So we tried to sort of break it down in that respect to prevent somebody coming in from Ogoshi. Or another perspective would be to, in order for her to be able to dominate that grip and actually make an attack from there. And the third option we worked with, which was various drills, was if an Ogoshi does come in, is reaction time to be able to get a counter off of it.
Good stuff. Yeah, that sounds like a great example of using the video as well to help them understand it as well as you do, and then working from there to find some solutions and some options. So there's one of them where quite often you think you're in a major advantage by being taller and having longer reach, but often it can lead you into a false sense of security and that you might overreach and get caught. And that sounds a little bit like that was what was going on there. So then it's finding your strategy to get there and then make sure the movement is in your direction and not theirs.
Yeah, she was just being a little bit probably too relaxed. And I think that was her own self-criticism of that as well. She was allowing the opponent to move in for the techniques. So we worked on, like I say, the three things that we tried to do, which was either try and dominate the grip and go in for the attack. The other one was dominate and defend against an attack, or should an attack come in, be able to counter. So it would give her the three options should one fail.
Nice one. Good stuff. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
I know you're here in more of a facilitating capacity, Nick, but have you got any coaching questions or observations on this that you've been looking at?
I found it really interesting listening to everyone. Something I thought might come up is whether there was any analysis of coaches, and I don't necessarily mean necessarily in the performance environment, although some coaches probably could be analysed in that environment, but certainly from actually coaching within the club, analysing the coaching style and their performance as a coach on the mat is something as a sort of British Judo development member of staff, the improvement of our coaching and the experience that we provide for our coaches, for our participants is really important to me. So, yeah, just is that something that do you think is done throughout? Do we use performance analysis on coaches throughout UK sport, or?
We do. How widespread it is probably up for debate. Interesting that you should ask that, because it's actually something I have literally proposed to the performance team this week. So yeah, you've asked a poignant question there. So yeah, it's something that I'm wanting to look at. There's a bit of a study that I was wanting to follow the structure of, to try and do with our coaches to understand how we feed back and how well that's understood. So as much as you feel like you've told them, you've given them the information, how much of that is then retained and then able to be used? That's something that I'm really interested in. So yeah, it's a really good point to make, because it's not something that anybody's pointed onto yet, but you can absolutely analyze your own coaching and your feedback. And it might be that you film or record yourself doing a debrief of a competition with a fighter and look at what kind of language you use, for example, or look at, or if you do that, then track how many times you give specific feedback on something, and then maybe a week later get your fighter to relay how many of those bits of information they remember. And that might be a really good way of understanding, right, A, am I just telling them stuff and not gauging their understanding? And B, like, how effective is this actual information I'm giving? So yeah, I think that it's definitely a really interesting concept, and something if you're curious about your own coaching, might be something worth trying out in some context. And I think what you'll find is that the interactions you have will become a lot more, they'll probably become a lot shorter and more efficient. And then equally, you'll get a bit more out of them at the other end. So yeah, it's worth looking at that kind of stuff. And I'm really interested in that. Yeah, I'll let you know how it goes, Nick.
Yeah, thanks. Just I'm conscious there's not that many of us left on the call now, but
yeah,
if there are other topics moving forwards, you know, if there's other areas of interest, I suppose, or discussion kind of groups that people would like me to facilitate, then please drop me a message and I'll see if I can, you know, get some, you know, maybe Chris might want to discuss other subjects, but we might be able to get some other speakers as well to speak. So yeah, just let me know, I suppose.
Sounds like a good plan, that, Nick. Ross, I think's next.
Yeah, hiya.
How you doing, Ross?
Another example which has been talked about all night, really. I'm sorry, but again, example we had was a small fighter being dominated by, you know, the grip over the top. So, you know, I looked at sort of physical, technical success and the next stages. So obviously, from the physical side, height, you cannot do anything about. It's just age, it's growth rates. So you're sort of stuck with that. But what he did have was really good strength and really good fitness. So again, if you then combine that with the technical, so whereas, you know, think about your grips, dominate the gripping, use something like Ippon Seoi-nage to counter the over grippers have come in for it. And again, what we also saw was he was trying to dominate with a high grip as well. So he was coming in too close, off balance, getting thrown. Again, just working on all of those and, you know, technically move your opponent. I think somebody else said that as well, but also use your strength as well. You know, physically you're strong, you're smaller, so use it. And I think obviously success, it's about winning. It's not just about winning contests, but, you know, first off, maybe, you know, is he attempting the technique? Has he listened? You know, is he then developing it in his training, in his sessions? You know, we helping them to develop that. And then, you know, the next step is don't just be a one technique. Look at other techniques you can use. Put combinations together and work on that. I think overall, just to summarize it as well, it's a bit like what Mike was saying there, you know, what he sees as a weakness, the height disadvantage, he's got really good positives in his strength, his fitness, he's got really good technique and he's fast, probably everything that tall fighter hates and has a problem with. So once you get past the grips, then that problem, you know, he's onto a winner, you know.
That's it. Yeah, it's a good way of thinking, to focus on what you're good at and work from that. Yeah. Nice one, Ross. Thank you. Stephen.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Stephen.
Yeah, so I've been looking at Kyle Jones. He's one of the he's with the GB Adaptive Judo squad. We fighted under 66s for my analysis. He's predominantly a left-handed fighter, but can fight both sides. And he struggles against taller right-hand fighters. Once they've gripped up, then he tends to sit in the pocket close to the hip. So we looked at strategies then of attacking from there. So the first thing we looked at was part of his Tokai Waza was Uchimata and Tane Toshi. So once he gets into that position, he then looked for his tack forward first for Uchimata. If that doesn't come off, you then take him backwards with Tane.
Yeah, good options there. Good options, showing that again the variety of direction and how you can use that to your advantage.
I also looked at different ways then of him, whilst stopping the arm coming over the top, then to with movement then to enable different tacks. So looking at pulling the sleeve and sashaying as well. So from that position as well.
Yeah, again, good options to have just to create the movement, even if they're not necessarily scoring attacks. Nice one. Martin is the last one on the list. I'm not sure if you've already spoken and just gone to the bottom of the list.
There's a question from Eddie as well in the chat, a couple of messages back.
Okay, question from Eddie, which was about, all right, so this might be difficult because of the wide variation in performance is being analysed, but because you love a spreadsheet, yeah, join the club. Is there any kind of sample template for recording all the main data that's already out there? Good question. I'd suggest firstly breaking it down into what was a score and what wasn't a score. So like you can record your Ipon, record your Rossari, and record what your attacks were. If you break down those and then have them against a time template, that's a really good place to start. So I'm not sure if I've got a standard sample template that would work for everybody, but you can certainly record something like that on like an Excel spreadsheet if you want, or on pen and paper, as somebody pointed out earlier. I think it might be Matthew, who, even if you write it down on a bit of paper, you're then able to look at what happens over time and where the sort of action points are, I suppose, if that makes sense. So while I'm not sure there's any sort of standard template that might be useful for everybody, that's certainly a good place to start, is looking at when things happen and what happens, and then you can start looking at the detail of that more specifically after that. Oh, Jamie's got his spreadsheet there. There you go. Badger Jamie for it. Okay, so I think we have all had our chance to share, haven't we? I think we have. Speak up now or forever hold your peace. Okay, good stuff. Right, I'm really sorry that took twice as long as it was supposed to. I was really hoping that the breakout rooms things would happen. It would be amazing, but unfortunately, the technology let me down. So I do feel that we've got a good interaction out of all of you anyway. So I hope that it's been enjoyable for all of you. I shall end the meeting shortly, but now you're able to. But before you leave, if there's people wanting to send things, I think Jamie is offering to send you his spreadsheet. So if anybody's interested, stay on and Jamie will.
If you want to send it to me, I can disseminate it out to everyone as part of the follow-up email. So any useful links or kind of documents, let me know and I can pass them on to everyone. So.
Nice one. All right, thanks for persevering, guys. The last standing 17 of you. Yeah, good effort from all of you, and I hope that you all got something from it and that you continue to use this kind of stuff in the future. And as Nick said,
I'll just finish by saying thanks to Chris before he cuts us all off. So thanks to Chris for giving up his time and sharing his knowledge. So thanks very much.
You're most welcome, guys. And as I said before, my email address is there for you on the presentation and the first one. So if you need to ask some questions, you can. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Enjoy your late dinners.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
Bye.